Today, we're looking at a green ink by Herbin Vert Olive. Hi, I'm Adam, and I'm an ink guy. I get inks, test them, and share the results with you. Now, if you like fountain pen ink reviews, I would invite you to subscribe. Also, if you're interested, you can follow me over on Instagram. In order to make sure I have a range of experience with this ink, I do the writing samples. I then put the ink into this cross Bailey with a medium nib. I wrote with it for a day, and then used it to write the notes for this video. In order to standardize some of my writing samples, I always use Clairfontaine, Tomoe River, and Rhodia paper for all of the inks. I do use other papers, and some of those will show up later in the video. Now, let's look at the writing sample. I picked this ink up in sample form, so it came in a vial like this. And to keep my writing samples consistent, I use a Jinhao 159 with a Goulet 1.1 stub, a Jinhao X450 with a Goulet medium, and a Jinhao X750 with a Goulet extra fine. Let's take a look at the Clairfontaine. No bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, very nice shading throughout a bunch of this writing. The extra fine, the extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, great shading all the way through it, 10 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, very nice shading, 12 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us good color variation, and we got good color variation. Tomoe River. No bleeding, very minor ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, no feather, no spread. It has halo the entire way through. All of it is haloed. All of it. No sheen, and there is some very nice shading, especially look at the word olive there. Now, the extra fine is quite a bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, but it does offer very nice shading, 14 seconds to dry. Medium is about the same tone as the extra fine. No feather, no spread. It does have halo in a couple of spots where it is just darkest, not a lot. No sheen, and it does shade quite nicely throughout the writing in 18 seconds to dry. Now, the scrubby for both don't show a lot of color variation, but we do get it in the writing. And Rhodia, with no bleeding, no ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather spread, halo sheen, a very nice shading. The extra fine is a little bit lighter than the stub with no feather spread, halo sheen, great shading all the way through the writing, 11 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine with no feather spread, halo sheen, still amazing shading all the way, 13 seconds to dry. Scrubby for both show us a lot of color variation, and that's what we do get. I agree with Vita that I've learned a lot by doing multiple chromatographies. The one on the left is done the way it's supposed to be done. I put a line of ink down and immediately put it into water for 10 to 15 seconds. And we see a very light gray at the bottom. It pushes its way up with a very strong yellow. This is not a weak, very translucent yellow. But across the top, we see a very nice light green. And the three of them is the reason we get such great color variation. Now, the one on the right, I let dry for 10 minutes before I dunk it into water. The only major difference we see here is the gray on the bottom is really forming a line. It's making you feel that it might have a little bit of permanence to it, but the rest of this is looking the same. Resistance tests are done to see how well this ink can be expected to perform on the page, and more importantly, how hard it may be to clean from your pen. I let the smear dry for 3 days before testing it. Looking at the highlighter, I would not use this ink in a note-taking situation if I wanted to be able to go back and highlight because of the amount of blowout that's occurring with the lowercase h. Now, water, the gray that was being left in the chromatography is very much still there from water. That's bonding with the paper, not bonding with converters or pens. Pen Flush is breaking down that gray a little bit more. It's lighter than it was with the water, but it did only take water for me to get this out of my pen. The 1/3 bleach solution completely removes it from the pen. I didn't need to use it. For the inks I've tested, I have found an average viscosity of 2.5, with a realm of normal being from 2.1 to 2.9. Now I'm going to link the video that shows how I do my testing and calculations. Herbin Vert Olive has a viscosity of 1.29, making this an incredibly wet ink. To find my average dry times, I use my writing samples, and for the inks I've tested, I found an average dry time of 17 seconds, with a realm of normal being from 13 to 21 seconds. Herbin Vert Orange has an average dry time of 13 seconds, putting it right on the edge, but still normal. Instead of finding inks that look like Herbin Vert Olive, I would prefer to find an ink that complements its color on the page. I went for a nice red, and I chose Colorverse Redshift. The second writing sample is done on yellow Rhodia, P. Berger, and White Lines paper. Here we're looking at the yellow Rhodia paper. With this being such a light green, it would be interesting to see if you get any kind of real color variation. And we're not really. It's basically the same, which is incredibly surprising to me, but I think that's because what it's been working with in the chromatography was that very strong yellow that came up, and I think that's the reason it's not being affected by the yellow paper. So P. Berger, it's a student grade French rule paper. We do get some bleeding, we do get some ghosting. The 1.1, it did touch the page underneath a little bit, just a little bit of spotting. The extra fine and the medium didn't touch the page underneath. The ghosting doesn't look too bad on camera. The 1.1 has feather, lots of it. No spread, no halo, no sheen, no shade. Extra fine is lighter than the stub, with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 2 seconds to dry. Medium is the same tone as the extra fine, with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 2 seconds to dry. The scrubby for both show us some color variation when you look at them left to right, but we're really not getting it. And White Lines paper. We do get little bits of bleed spots that occur with the extra fine and the stub, and 1 or 2 spots with the medium, but not a big deal. Probably wouldn't stop you from using the back of the page. Didn't touch the back of the page. Barely caused any ghosting. The 1.1 has no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade. The extra fine is lighter than the stub with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, no shade, 1 second to dry. The medium is the same tone as the stub with no feather, spread, halo, sheen, and no shade, 2 seconds to dry. Now the scrubby for the both of them are showing a little bit of color variation far left to far right, although it's not there in the writing, and that's all that I have for the writing samples. So what do I think of Herbin Vert Olive? This is a very light green, but it's not too light to be able to read from the page comfortably. A whole page of it might seem a little bit too much for your eyes though. So it's a weird balance that it's definitely easy to read, but very bright, so I would use it sparingly on the page. Now, occasionally it does offer some color variation. So what nib and pen give the best writing experience with this ink? I found that a wet stub put down a little bit more color variation and gave a very nice halo throughout all of its writing. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, and if it's your first time here, I'm going to remind you, if you enjoyed it, subscribe. Thanks for watching.